All right, Erie, we are back. Man, Monday to Thursday feels like it's forever. It literally feels like there's a 3-week gap in between our Monday show and our Thursday show, but we are back. We made it. It's almost the weekend. And I can say personally, with the week we've had, it's great to be back and it's great to be on and it's great to be with you all on the Gem City Sports Podcast and the Gem City Sports Podcast Network. We are streaming live on YouTube, on Twitch, on X, on Facebook, and wherever you get your podcasts. Isaac Pekash, Nick Artman, and Jonathan Williams joining us tonight. Gents, how's the week? How's things? It's been a while since we've talked. Jonathan, I know you've been in your travels. And Nick, I feel like I said, Monday's just been forever ago.
Listen, Monday, so much happens in the sports world between Monday and Thursday. We might have to start thinking about like a Tuesday show or something like that. I don't know. I got to convince the powers that be about that one. But
right.
Yeah, man, feeling good for a Thursday night. No complaints here.
Yeah, no, it's been a smooth week so far. Definitely good to kind of be done with the travel for a minute and all of the running around. I'm back grounded where I'm at, so it's been good to kind of come home and rest a little bit.
And we're glad to be with you all on this Thursday. It's our first of 2 episodes on back-to-back nights. We, of course, will have live reaction to Week 7 tomorrow. Yes, you've heard the critical eyes going away, but our podcast is not. I just want to make that perfectly clear. We're not going anywhere. So you have to deal with us on the social interwebs for a lot longer. We will have high school football reaction, and our Friday show will still continue here digitally in week number 7, and we're going to talk a lot about that in the show. We've got so much with week number 7, huge region matchups, Fairview, Fort LaBeouf with likely backup quarterbacks, McDowell, Cathedral, Prep. We'll dive in on those 2 matchups a little bit to start our show. Then, of course, we're talking NFL. The Gents are going to give their week 5 predictions with the Steelers and Cowboys, Browns, Commanders, and Bills and Texans with so many storylines there. We'll react a little bit to the Von Miller news as well. And then a quick little jab of baseball in the playoffs. Nick, you were telling me that you were looking at Game 3 of the Wild Card Series, Mets and Brewers right now, but we're talking a bit about Detroit, Cleveland, and how the Tigers have been able to make their way to the playoffs. I don't know. I want to get your guys' thought. I've always thought that playoff hockey is the most exciting playoffs out of all the sports, but I think baseball's up there, all due respect to football. I mean, again, every football playoff game is something. I just think the atmosphere of like baseball playoffs, it's hard to beat.
Yeah. Well, see, growing up a Pirates fan, I don't know what that atmosphere feels like. So I have no idea, but I love it. And that's when I get hyped for the beginning of the season. I love the All-Star break. And then since my team falls apart, I fall apart until playoffs. But I got to give the slight edge to hockey. But yeah, there's something about, October baseball that just feels right.
Yeah, growing up a Braves fan, that's like the one professional franchise that has ever won anything or has won anything recently that I'm a fan of. So I was actually down in Atlanta when we won the World Series back in, I think it was 21.
Did you go to a game?
I was at the watch party at Truist because they won it on the road in Houston.
Yeah.
And yeah, like even when you're not in the stadium, because I was there for Game 5 too, and we were at home and I was outside of the stadium. Even when you're not inside the stadium, it's like none other.
Man, I was at the watch party in 2017 for the Penguins when they beat the Predators in Game 6. And again, like no one's there, but there's 18, 19, and in your case, probably 30,000 fans that were just going crazy, whooping, hooting, hollering. Nick, I just want to paint a picture in our head for a second for all the Pirate fans out there. Just imagine a playoff game with Andrew McCutcheon as the leadoff hitter in a blackout with Paul Skeens toeing the rubber in Game 1.
Listen, man.
Just paint that in your head for a second.
PNC Park, oh gosh, I forget the year now, but I'm thinking like the Johnny Cueto, the playoff.
2013. It's been almost 12 years.
Yeah, they're just chanting Cueto's name. The guy drops the ball. Like it was electric. Just the Pirate fans of Pittsburgh and the city is just dying for a playoff game. And Skeens gives you that hope. We talked about this all year on Flagship City, where I call it the life cycle of a Pirates fan. And actually, it's like the Cowboys, which we'll get into later.
Yeah.
It's you get excited, you get these players, you get a Paul Skeens, and you hope the guy sticks around. But the running joke I always say is, you just hope that you can get a playoff game in before the guy's wearing a Yankees uniform.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I mean, and look, if I were Ben Cherington and I were Bob Nutting, I'd be putting $400 million on the table right now for Paul. But that ain't how they roll. That's not how they roll in the Steel City. I'll tell you what. It is pennies on the dollar for Pirates fans, and I don't want to belabor the point because that would make people not watch our show.
Just ask Roddy Tellez.
Yeah, exactly.
Paid before he makes a bonus. I'll tell you what, man. While we're on the topic, let's just go ahead and start. I was going to ask you guys on your World Series predictions. Let's do that now since we're talking. Nick, do you have a World Series prediction, and how do you think the Tigers Guardians series will go?
Gosh, it's hard to count out the Phillies. I think they're playing very well. Yeah. The Tigers, we'll get into the Guardian stuff in a little bit. The Tigers could be, sneaky worst to first kind of look. But, man, the firepower of the Dodgers, I don't see how you beat that team. When you have your best player is supposedly on a rehab year.
Yeah.
And is still one of the best players in baseball, is Shohei Ohtani. I just think there's too much. And I think this is my problem with baseball, is that there's too much talent. They went out and bought too much talent on that team, and I just don't see anybody that is really going to shut them down.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I don't know who I have the Dodgers facing, but I'm kind of just leaning towards the Dodgers as far as the amount of talent that they have, the amount of money they've spent, and Shohei, and he's the greatest show in the world right about now, and he is Mr. Baseball right now. I'm going with them, especially now that my Braves are out.
All right, so I'll be the all stray from the norm here. I actually don't think the Dodgers are getting out of the NLDS. I think San Diego is going to beat them. My problem is and we see with the Tigers, right? You need great pitching and great bullpens to win a World Series. And I think after Tyler Glasnow got put on the 60-day IL back in September, I don't know who the Dodgers have it for starting pitching. I mean, yeah, if Shohei's healthy, heck yeah, you throw him for game 1, you throw him for game 4. Maybe out of the bullpen in game 5, but I don't think the pitching is there for the Dodgers. And I actually think it might be a hot take. I'd take San Diego's hitting lineup right now over LA's. Top 3, no, but 1 through 9, I think this is a team in the Padres, and John Lanik might accuse me of being a homer because I like the Padres too, but I just think they've got more talent top to bottom. Who knows though? I think we're going to see a team from the AL Central in the World Series. I know that's not saying much, but I don't think the Yankees are going to get there. It's New York. I mean, I think they've gotten cursed in the 21st century. So who knows? We'll see. We'll talk a little bit more about the Tigers and Guardians a little bit later in the show. But the MLB playoffs and the division series are going to be set in about 2 hours when the Mets and Brewers get finished with game number 3. All right, but we start our show tonight, 9 minutes into it, with high school football week 7. It's already here. It's hard to believe. We've got 4 more weeks left in the regular season, 3 that really matter. Week 10's kind of you play the game if you really need to play the game. But I thought we would take a bit of time to start our show, guys, and talk about the 2 games that are most pivotal. McDowell Cathedral Prep number 1. We know how intense this rivalry is, and even though they're in different classifications, it's a pseudo for the region championship. Let's just break down these 2 teams first in particular coming into this game. And I want to start with the team that I think, Jonathan, you and I talked last week, was really impressive in the McDowell Trojans. They beat Villa Angela St. Joseph, who had been 5-0 going into the game. They rack up, I think it was a 24-7 lead. Nick, we talked about on Monday's show, Blaze Myers with his 4 touchdowns. Stephon Porter had a rushing and a receiving touchdown. What about the Trojans offense, just from what we've seen, guys? What has allowed them to be as consistent as they've been in the last few games? Because they're on a heater right now and probably playing their best football.
When you play some of the best teams in the state of Ohio to start off your season, and you play against top-tier talent and top-tier competition, and you kind of get your brains beat in a little bit, just a tad, by some of those teams, you learn a lot about yourself. You learn a lot about yourself as a team. You learn a lot about yourself as a player, and you get a lot of good film on what works and what doesn't. And it gives you opportunity to correct a lot of things. I feel like when you go and you play those tough games and you play those really good teams and they expose you a little bit, now you got something to work on when you go back to practice. Now you got extra film to watch. Now you know the kinks that you have to work out. And they've started to work those kinks out, and they are starting to hit their stride at the right time.
Yeah, and I think, this was a team that kind of fell off my radar early on. I mean, as much as a McDowell football team can fall off your radar, but they start out the season against Woodland Hills, and at Woodland Hills, the Wolverine is in just a tough place to go play, and they go in and beat Woodland Hills 34-28 in that late night game. And then they lose back-to-back, Walsh Jesuit and against Menor, and that's, they lost 47-21 and they lost 50-14. Those weren't big, or those weren't little losses, So I think I just started to not really pay attention. Then they come back and they just beat Erie High 28-24, nothing against Erie. But then, Meadville 49-21, and then last week Villa Angela St. Joseph, where I feel like they've hit their stride. I mean, you have Blaze Myers, who's one of the best quarterbacks in the state, is currently scanning my notes, 1,358 yards and 10 touchdowns this year.
Well.
Yeah, I mean, the offense is on fire. Stephon Baby Porter is, 797 yards and 6 touchdowns. I mean, they're clicking, they're getting hot at the right moment, and I think that rolls right into this weekend as well.
I think what's so interesting for McDowell is you see a lot of teams that are in higher classifications. And Jonathan is a former player, this. Sometimes when you have studs, you try to find, okay, well, we need to have alternative options, right? Because, other teams are going to key in on our guys. They're not going to allow us to have success. So we need to try to throw the football to the outside, maybe look for some other players. And while McDowell's been able to develop depth, I talked to Aaron Slocum today in our previews for the game tomorrow. And the one thing I think the sentiment that's been unfolded from McDowell in the last 3 games is that they're just trusting their studs. I think they have really bought into the fact that, we've got Blaze Myers, who's probably a top 1 or 2 quarterback, maybe outside of Isaac Seitz and all of District 10. Stephon Porter has been a stalwart at running back really since he was a freshman a few years ago. And we're just going to roll with them. And we're going to lean on what we do best. McDowell's offensive line is always one of the best in the entire state of Pennsylvania. And that's even with the loss of Cooper Cousins. I think the thing that they're, again, their stars are really working out well. And then also, too, you got to give some credit to the defense. 24, 21, and 35 given up to a Villa Angela St. Joseph team who had been running opponents off the scoreboard in their schedule in the early part of the season. And the defense is starting to get there, too. And I also wonder, Jets, and you guys comment on this, I almost feel, too, like maybe we gave Aaron Slocum too much expectation early in the year because he was with the program for so long, right? He coached with Bo Orlando as an assistant. He manned the defense. But even when you're with a program for as long as you are, it is hard to make a leap to head coach. Oh, yeah. And I think that we're starting to see now, first 3-4 games, it was rough sledding, trying to figure it out for Coach Slocum. And I think now he's found his groove.
Yeah, Jonathan, you know better than I do. I'll let you jump in.
Yeah, no, he's definitely kind of found his rhythm. And to your point about them just kind of leaning on their guys, at some point, yes, you have to develop the rest of the roster. At some point, yes, you have to get everybody else involved just in case you play against a team that's able to take away your studs. But at some point, you got to walk into a game and say, okay, my guys are better than your guys, and I'm going to depend on my stars to get it done. I'm going to depend on my leaders, my seniors, my older guys, and the guys that have been showing up for me time and time again to beat your guys. And I feel like that's what you're seeing a little bit out of McDowell is they're just putting their trust in their playmakers at this point and letting them go play free football. And it's a great thing as a player when you know your coach and your team has confidence in you to kind of put the team on your back and they go as you go. So with Blaze at quarterback, like everybody's following him. He knows that. He knows everybody follows the beat of his drum. So if this team goes as he goes and he's playing well, they can be dangerous.
Yeah, and Isaac, I love your point on the X's and O's where you think of I think you're right. I think there was just kind of an assumption that this offense would be the same, where it would be the same old McDowell team. But even, at any level, when you have, an assistant or an offensive coordinator at the NFL level that goes and becomes a head coach, they make changes to the offense, they make changes to the defense, they add their spin to it. And maybe they were working some of the kinks out, and maybe that's an off-season question for a player or a coach that we can kind of pull apart, because maybe they just needed some time to get it to click. Now it's clicking, and I think they're rolling momentum into this game.
And again, we'll get to the matchup tradition in a few minutes after we get the Cathedral Prep. But traditionally, when McDowell has won this matchup, they've won it with defense running the football and low scoring, and we're going to get to that in a second. But again, I think Blaze Myers' running game in this one, in addition to Stephon Porter, will be as critical as his ability to throw the football, because Cathedral Prep's been really, really good in the secondary when they've been on their game this season. Let's talk about the Ramblers, guys. They picked up their first loss of the season last week. Great St. Francis team out of New York in a 35-21 defeat. Before that point, they were 5-0. So they come into this game 5-1. It is their first region game since week 1, when Jonathan, you and I were there and we saw them beat Erie, but not convincingly, 18-6. And since then, they've really just blown teams off the map if you eliminate the St. Francis game and the close game against Riverside back in week number 3. Start with you on this, Jonathan, because I think it's similar to McDowell that, there's always expectation on Prep, but I think this season, a lot of concern coming into the year was, okay, you lose really all of your talent on offense from last season to graduation. Your quarterback, Luke Costello, graduates. DeJour Hollingsworth, your leading running back, graduates. Other pieces of the offense were not there anymore. And yet they continue to win football games. I'm curious to get your thoughts on what you've seen, because we've watched them play a good amount of football here. How has Cathedral Prep been able to do it? Is it getting Mike Mishler as OC? Is it just being able to stick to what you know? What about this Prep team keeps them winning football games?
Well, for one, I remember that first game, and I remember hearing the head coach talking to the team in the huddle afterwards and basically saying, yeah, nobody really believed in us. We, a lot of new starters, really young team. Nobody really knew what we had. And that's fairly true. When you lose as many offensive starters and lose as many starters, period, as they've lost, and you're as young of a team and as young of a roster as they are, it's going to lead to a lot of questions. And I feel like the Erie game didn't really help put a lot of those questions to bed. Like you said, it wasn't the strongest performance. They found a way to win, and that was kind of what they had to rely on early, was just finding ways to win football games until they got it going, until they started clicking. And I know they like to throw the football. They like to spread the ball around. They like to line up in the shotgun and sling it. But I've also seen them show the ability to kind of balance out a little bit more, come under center, and really run the football when they need to, especially in games where that passing game isn't working. From what I've seen from them being able to be a balanced offense when they have to be has been the key to them winning some games. And you look at this last loss, and you lose to the number 4 ranked team via Max Preps. You lose to the number 4 ranked team in all of New York. It's like you're playing the same level of competition, it seems like, as McDowell started off their season with. You're playing top teams in other states. So it's not something that it's not something to hang your head on. It's not something to hang your head about. And you're in that game. It's not like you went in there and got blown out. So playing good competition, being balanced on offense, and being able to slow it down and run the ball when you have to, those are good recipes for success if you're Prep.
I think what surprises me, or maybe what impresses me with Prep, is, we just got done talking about McDowell, and we're talking about their starters, right? Blaze Myers, Stephon Baby Porter. But then when you get to Prep, this was the thing that we were looking at the beginning of the year. Who's going to step up for this team? They had a lot of turnover. The weird thing is, nobody's really stepped up. It's been the team. There's been a collection of players. They've had 3 different quarterbacks play at some point this year. Yeah. You're spreading the ball around to over 10 different players, and rushing yards coming from everybody. So it's this, I think, is a sneaky advantage for them, because if you're the other team, if you're McDowell and you're looking at the tape, right, and you're going, how do we prep for these guys? Yeah. Well, who do you prep for? Obviously you can pull out some. They've had Prep has had some injury, maybe bad luck. I was going to say luck, but some injury disadvantage there. But it's been next man up mentality at Prep, and it's working for them. So I think that's kind of their sneaky upside, is it doesn't matter who's playing what position, they're playing at a high level.
Yeah, and I think you make a really good point there, Nick. You look at Charbel Latouf. He was going to be a big part of the running back attack early in the season. He's picked up a lot as of late, even on the defensive side. I think Corey Allen's been a name that has really started to rule the roost for Prep. They run him on a lot of jet sweeps, outside screens. He's got speed, and he's had a couple of long touchdowns this season, including some at home, which has been really helpful for Prep's offense. Maybe you look at a Griffin Potts, even a Jacob Koshin, who's been there in the running back department as well. They have some guys who can play the superstar role. But I think the depth for Prep, which we did not expect, and I don't even think they expected to be very good this season, has been a lot better than what people believe. So I think when you look at this Rambler team, of course, this game against McDowell is going to be important, but I don't know if this 5-1 is a fluke 5-1. I think it's a 5-1 that is solid. It's committed. A 2-touchdown loss to St. Francis really isn't the end of the world. And I think you guys make a good point now with Prep, is that we looked at the schedule at the beginning of the season. We said, well, how good's Erie really going to be? Sharon's a 3A team, Warren on the schedule. Is it really going to be up to the standards of, okay, when we get to playoffs, we've tested ourselves? And I think the answer so far has been yes. Prep has really tested themselves in a really big game coming up against McDowell, of course, tomorrow night. Let's talk about the keys. And I'm not going to ask you guys to make a pick because, then we get picked on for saying who we think is going to win. Let's start with you, Nick. Give me a key to this game and how you think if it's going to go one way or another, what has to happen? Key for you in this game tomorrow night.
All right, so get in my mentions because I am going to throw in a pick, and I'm going with McDowell, and I think the X factor. I think that what makes them stand out, and it's going to be a close game, and it's going to be a dogfight. It always is. It's especially at the vet, right? I think the X factor is Blaze Myers. I just think the experience. He's starting to heat up a little bit. And I think when you have a quarterback with that amount of talent who has a control of an offense and has a good supporting cast around him that is going to perform, I give it to Blaze Myers and the McDowell Trojans.
Jonathan, I'm not going to make you pick, but if you want to, go ahead. Otherwise, give a key.
Honestly, who can play the cleanest football game? Who can play the most mistake-free football? And I know you hear it all the time. It's like, don't turn the ball over. But honestly, in a game like this where you have two seemingly evenly matched teams, both that have played really well, really good competition, both coming in kind of riding highs this season because they performed well this season, who can handle the pressure of playing at the vet with the entire city there, and who can minimize mistakes? Don't shoot yourself in the foot. Don't make unforced errors. Don't turn the ball over excessively, and you put yourself in great position to win a game. I am going to make a pick because I feel like that's just what we do. And yeah, go ahead and jump into my mentions as well if I'm wrong, but I'm leaning McDowell in this one. I'm leaning McDowell.
You guys make some great points. I think that the clean part of the game is going to be huge. Historically, as I said in this rivalry, when McDowell wins, it's a low scoring. Last year, they were at home, won 23-13. This game was close until the second half, and then the run game took over. And I think what McDowell has been able to do when they have success against Prep is to control the line of scrimmage. Both these teams really manifest success from the front line back. And I think Cooper Cousins and company last year did a really good job of mauling Prep off the line. 2 years ago, when these two teams played at Veterans Stadium, it was the opposite. Cathedral Prep dominated the line of scrimmage, and the Ramblers took the top off McDowell because Luke Costello had time to throw. That was a 41-0 dominant win for the Ramblers. When McDowell came in, if there was a betting line, they were probably 10 to 14-point favorites in that game. So I'm not going to make a pick. I will tell you where I'm leaning. I'm actually leaning the other way. I'm leaning Prep. And I only say this because I think for this Rambler team, they have an ability to not have to worry about the line of scrimmage because they've shown they can get the ball to the outside. I don't think Davin Friedman is a superstar quarterback, but I do think he's very good at being able to manage a game. And I think a lot of times people look at a game manager as a bad term for a quarterback. I don't think that's the case. I think he's a guy who can get the ball to the right guy who then makes the play. And with Prep, they have enough athletes to be able to make plays specifically on the outside. I think the first quarter is going to be telling. If Prep comes out and gets an early long touchdown, I think it's going to be a long night for McDowell. If it is a grinded out 7-7, 10-7 game at the half, then I favor the Trojans. But I think Prep's going to come out really, really aggressive in this game. And if McDowell can weather the storm, it'll be good for them. But I would lean slightly like a toss-up state in the election, I would lean slightly Prep. But I think it's going to be a great game nonetheless. We're going to have, of course, a reaction and highlights to it coming up tomorrow. Prep-McDowell at Veterans Stadium at 7 o'clock. Alert, if you're going to go to the game, get there early. Parking at Veterans Stadium's awful. It's just horrendous. So make sure you get there early, get parked, get situated. And if you got to wait a half hour at the gate, you got to wait a half hour at the gate because that game is always packed. Yeah. All right, that's one game. The other game, which might be more important standings-wise, is Fairview-Fort LaBeouf. And 3 weeks ago, gents, when we were going to talk about this game, we figured, okay, it's Vinny Campoli against the Fort LaBeouf rushing attack, and that's no longer the case. With the injury to Vinny Campoli and Fort LaBeouf banged up at quarterback as well. Two teams coming in at 4-2, and they're 2-0 for the region. This could arguably determine the region championship and also, too, seeding in Class 3A. Let's start with the visitors. Start with the Fairview Tigers. 4-2 coming into this game. They just beat Seneca 13-9 in a gritty effort, in a gritty game that was a non-region game. What do you make of the Tigers minus Campoli? I'll start with you, Jonathan, on this. Don't have your quarterback, but they can still run the football. How do you think the Tigers have been able to can they maintain success without Vinny?
You have to go on long drives. Like, especially winning a game 13-9 like you did against Seneca, like there wasn't a lot of explosive offense. There weren't a lot of points scored. There wasn't a lot of plays made on that side of the ball. You have to dominate time of possession, and you have to go on long drives to keep the opposing offense off of the field. Like, that's how you win games, when you don't have an offense that can put up a lot of points. And with Campoli down, you don't know about their offense as far as their ability to light up the scoreboard right now. So now your entire game plan kind of switches. Now the way that you play kind of changes a little bit. You go to more ground and pound, run the clock, hog the ball, and really keep opposing offenses off the field. That way you can keep the score low and you give yourself a fighting chance at the end of the game. Mm-hmm. And that's what I feel like the key is going to be for Fairview, is just control time of possession, go on long drives. Even if you're not getting in the end zone, keep Fort LaBeouf's offense off the field.
You go, Nick, here on this. Just your thoughts on this Tiger team, because I think, I'll give my thoughts on the defense, but what you think of this Tiger team minus a couple of their big players.
Yeah, no, it was interesting to me because I thought without Campoli, this team's really going to struggle, right? And Semino looked good last week. Carlos Semino comes in, next man up. Fairview's 4-2. I think that Semino, give him another game. I think Fairview is going to want to keep the momentum rolling. They rolled over Seneca, who's a great team. Like, Seneca is not a slouch of a team this year.
Yeah.
And they go in, they win 13-9. I think you said this a little bit ago. I think the game, the idea of a quarterback being a game manager is a little overused. But if Semino can do that, and then I'll throw it to you because I know you got some stuff on the defense. I think that defense is playing well enough that if Semino can manage the game, I think that they can pull out this win. And I don't disagree with what you said earlier too. I think this could very well be a preview of, the Region 5 title. But I think that Fairview defense only averaging 14 points a game against, that's going to be tough to overcome for Fort LaBeouf and a backup quarterback.
And the one thing, too, that I think you have to consider, and this is where I transition to the defense, is Mark Sobolewski's been around D10 a while. He knows injuries are going to happen. I think even though he took the training wheels off Vinny Campoli, if you will, before the injury, I think one of the things that he knew probably in the back of his mind was that we were never going to have a fully healthy Vinny. And even if we had him for the whole season, we were going to have to rely on other people to make the offense work, whether it's Tyler Benford in the backfield, whether it's the outside with your receivers, Aiden Herman, Tyler DeVecchio, whoever, it doesn't really make a difference. Mark Sobolewski is a heck of a coach. This guy understands attrition. He understands what it means to be able to bounce back, and he knows the next man up mentality. He had to do it in McDowell. He's having to do it at Fairview now. And I think coaching is such a big part of this, and that's where the defense comes into play. This Fairview team, when they win games, they're not allowing many points. In fact, there's only been one game this season that they've won that they've allowed more than 14 points. And that was when they beat Girard in that rain-soaked game 31-20. Really wasn't as close as the score indicated. Girard got a couple of late touchdowns. But And I think Fairview's got a good chance in this game because of the way that their defense is played. And I think, we'll get to Fort LaBeouf in a second and their ability to win games late. But I think for the Tigers, it's going to come down to, for me, is can the middle of the defense, i.e. the linebackers, not allow big plays? Because I think if that's something that Fort LaBeouf is able to do and connect on big plays in the run game specifically, Fairview could have a tough day. But again, a lot of credit to Mark Sobolewski and this Tiger team. They have done a really good job of doing more with less being when your team gets injured to heck and back. And I think that they've got a good shot to go in there and really compete for a chance to win this game. And again, we could be talking about a top 4 seed on the line here. If for Fort LaBeouf, we could be talking about a top 3 seed if they keep winning games. And let's transition now to the Bison, who had probably their hardest game of the season last week in a 28-6 loss to General McLean. I actually thought the defense played particularly well. If you eliminate the long touchdowns, they gave up big plays, but they didn't allow General McLean to really drive the ball down the field that much. Nick, start with you on the Bison. What has impressed you most about LaBeouf, and give us something that you think they can hang their hat on heading into Friday night?
I think it's the fact that they can win close games. They came out of the gate, lost a big one to Meadville for game 1, 41-27. But then they came back. I mean, I remember being in the studio, what didn't seem like that long ago. It's 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago now, where they take down Farrell in the last seconds of the game, 29-28. Yeah. And it's just been from there, 19-13, 28-23, 21-17, and then the big loss to just an incredible General McLean team this year. So I think the keys to the game for them are going to be they're going to want to bounce back after this win, and they're going to want to rally against their backup quarterback if that ends up being the direction they go. So I think this is just going to be a low-score defensive matchup, and I think the key for Fort LaBeouf is going to be their defense, and just whoever's going to get that last stop is going to get the win in this one.
For me, especially with your injuries at quarterback, you have to run the football, and that comes in handy in close games. Like you said, we've seen them win a ton of really close down to the wire football games where as long as they're within a score going into the fourth quarter or getting late in the fourth quarter, this team has a shot. This team has more than a shot to win the game. And that's the one thing that's impressed me about them is they just don't stop playing.
Yeah.
Like Fort LaBeouf is a hard team to put away, and GM was able to do it. Yeah. But this is a team that just doesn't quit. It doesn't matter how much they're down by. It doesn't matter how late the game is. It doesn't matter. You might be on the inch-yard line about to score to take the lead. Nothing is given to you against this Fort LaBeouf team, and that's one of the biggest things I've noticed about them. And one of their biggest assets this season so far is that they just don't stop playing. And when you finish games, when you play complete football games, and you don't take a play off, you don't take plays off at all during the game, you set yourself up to win.
I agree. And I think you guys really hit the nail on the head. I'll just add my 2 cents for the Bison. I'm interested to see how aggressive Justin Blows is early in the game. We've seen LaBeouf. Look, it was like this with Jeff Nichols. It's like this with Justin Blows. They know what they are. They run the football. They attack downhill. They're not going to try to do anything super fancy. But I wonder in a game like this, knowing that Fairview won't have their starting quarterback, knowing that they're banged up are the Tigers, do you try to take a shot? Or do you try a trick play or try to be creative and you try to essentially buy yourself an early lead? Because I think if LaBeouf plays from in front in this game, they've got a huge advantage. They're at home. They're going to have, outside of their quarterback potentially, they're going to have a good complement of guys, in terms of health. I just wonder if this is the game where Justin Blows say, you know what, we're practicing a wrinkle play. We're going to try to implement it early into the game, and we're going to see if we can sneak 7 free points to get up early, take a lead, and get some momentum. But I think it's going to be a defensive battle, and I think LaBeouf's defense has been just as good as Fairview's this season. We know their late-game heroics. And again, if this game goes down to the wire, you would say that Fort LaBeouf is the team to favor. I just think Fairview's also played well down the stretch as well. You go back, biggest example, the Harbor Creek game when they were down 2 scores late in the third quarter and they ended up coming back to win. So Going to be a huge game, of course, a region game. I think the winner of this is well on their way to a top 4 seed in 3A. So, if you guys would like to pick this, feel free. Nick, we're going to start with you. Give me a key, and if you want a prediction, go ahead, because we've already gone down that road once in this show.
I'm going to give the key to Fairview, and they're going to keep the momentum rolling, like I said earlier, after that win against Seneca. And I think Samina looked great. Give him another game. I just think that Fairview defense against, a backup quarterback, I think that's edge Fairview. It's going to be a low-scoring defensive matchup, but just that little piece, that little key is enough to give Fairview the win.
Jonathan, you.
I apologize, Coach Sobes, but I'm going the other way. I'm going Fort LaBeouf in this one. Their defense has also played really well over the course of this season. I like them in close games. And like everybody's saying, like all of us are saying, it's going to be a close game. It's going to be a defensive showdown. It's not going to be a lot of points scored in this game. And that just seems to favor Fort LaBeouf to me. They've done it time and time again this season. So who am I to pick against them this time?
Yeah, I like the diversity in the picks here. Again, I'm going to be actually at this game filming it. I would give the edge slightly again to Fort LaBeouf just because of how much Vinny Campoli brought to the Fairview offense. And I think my concern with the Tigers is even if their defense plays as well as they've been playing, which I think that they will, I think the number that you're going to have to get to win this game is 21. I don't know if Fairview's offense is able to get to 21. They can't. They might. I mean, their run game could be great. But if you're asking me who can get to 21 first, I would say I think I would favor Fort LaBeouf to get to 21 before I would favor Fairview. And I also think the home crowd's going to play a big factor. I mean, this is a Fort LaBeouf team that just came off of in their eyes, probably a humiliating home loss to General McLean in a rivalry game that really wasn't close on the scoreboard. So, I think it's going to be a heck of a game. I realistically, to me, and this is all due respect to McDowell Prep, this is the game of the week because how important it is for standings and playoff purposes, and really for these two teams to prove that without the key player at the key position, they can still go in and win a rivalry game. So going to be a heck of a game. Fairview Fort LaBeouf, that's at Carmen Benito Stadium in Waterford, and that's Friday at 7:00. Other games that are happening in Week 7 before we get to some NFL stuff. Games actually happening now. Mercyhurst Prep's hosting Union City. Maplewood hosting Sagertown. Those games in progress. Titusville's also hosting Hickory. That's a heck of a game in terms of Class 3A implications. So we're going to try to see if we can get a score on that as we roll through our show. Other games, specifically ones that make sense to our area. Corey visits Northeast. Girard's at Harbor Creek. General McLean on their coming game face Warren. Eisenhower and Seneca, which could be a very interesting one where those teams are concerned. Iroquois and Northwestern. Franklin visits Meadville, and Cambridge Springs travels to Cochranton. All right, let's talk NFL as we roll along here on the Gem City Sports Podcast on our Gem City Sports Podcast Network, wherever you may be watching. Thanks again for being with us. Isaac Petcash, Nick Artman, Jonathan Williams on our pod tonight. We are live on YouTube, on Twitch, on X, on Facebook. I always feel like I'm missing one, but I don't think I am.
I just tell people, if you just look up Gem City Sports on any social media network, we're there. We're broadcasting.
There are too many places to stream on. And it was funny because my wife actually asked me a couple days ago. She's like, "Isn't Twitch just for video games?" And I said, "I don't know. They let me make an account, so I made one."
Hey, we have one person tuned in on Twitch right now, so that's one person we wouldn't have without it. Kudos to you, whoever's tuning in on Twitch. You
know what? One's more than zero, and we appreciate it. By the way, leave us a comment if you're listening for high school football. Tell us who you think is going to win McDowell Cathedral Prep and Fairview Fort LaBeouf, and give us what game you're going to be going to as well. Let's jump into the NFL and talk the games this weekend, and let's start with the team that is coming off of a bad loss. They're all coming off of bad losses, but the worst loss, I think, arguably, is the Buffalo Bills. So much intrigue to this game as they travel to Houston to take on the Texans. Want to start with your reaction, guys, to the Von Miller suspension. Of course, came down on Tuesday that Von would be suspended 4 games for violating the personal conduct policy. Jonathan, just your thought. Was it right? Was it not enough? Do we need more info? Your thoughts on the Von suspension and how it might affect the Bills in terms of their depth moving forward.
It's always tough with situations like this, and it's always a touchy subject to talk about as far as off-the-field issues when it comes to some of these players. But if you're the league, you have to suspend him. Like you can't just let him play and not do anything to him and not sit him down at all. So suspension is right. I'm not one to speculate on games. It's kind of whatever they hand down is what they hand down. But it's definitely a fair suspension in my eyes. And as far as the effect on the Bills, I mean, Von Miller has had an impact this season at defensive end, but Von Miller was not who we were looking at coming into this season to be one of the top defensive ends on this roster. And you still have other great defensive ends on this roster, Greg Rousseau. Like, you still have guys that can wreak havoc lining up at that position to the point where I don't think it hurts you terribly badly. You know, you might get a couple guys that get a couple extra reps, and you don't get to take as many breathers because you got Von Miller coming to relieve you on third down or whatever down. But I don't think it's going to hurt Buffalo that badly, honestly, missing him. And they'll get him back in 4 games and well rested and tuned up. They're ready to go for the rest of the season.
Nick, let me ask you about, do you have a thought on Von Miller, by the way, before we talk about something else?
I don't necessarily know it's a thought. I mean, it's from what I've read, and I was talking to a Bills reporter today actually, and just kind of talking to just kind of like what's happening, and it's still not really. I mean, there's the rumor, right? This goes back to when he turned himself in Dallas last November for the assault charges, and the assumption is that's what it's for. I don't if it's anything doing with that, yeah, absolutely he should be suspended and for a long time. In terms of like, is it a loss for the Bills? I don't know. I think it's depth, and I think that's been the key to the Bills this year has been their lack of depth, especially in the defense. Well, not lack of depth. They've had to go through their depth because of injuries. So I don't necessarily think that this is like detriment to the starting offense. We talked about this weeks ago with Miller being just kind of a role player, a third down pass rusher, kind of like a third down back. I just think that means you need Rousseau and Epinesa to step it up even more.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I was going to ask you guys if you thought this Ravens game was just a fluke and a bad game or if it was a trend. I'll throw in my 2 cents. I just think every good team has a bad game. And they ran into a buzzsaw, did Buffalo. I mean, Baltimore was on the cusp of going 1-3. They were at home. I think Derrick Henry had his coming out party. We hadn't seen him be effective in the first 3 weeks of the season. That changed in the Sunday night game. I think for Buffalo, Nick, you made a good point. I think their depth is going to be tested. The thing that concerns me a little bit, and I understand that they don't have a superstar wide receiver, but I don't know if there's been anyone that has emerged as a need to have it target. What I mean by that is you don't have to have a guy that's going to put up 1,000, 1,500 yards. But I think we thought before the season that, okay, maybe Khalil Shakur was going to be that guy where if Josh is in a panic, he's got him, right? He can trust to throw the ball to him. Maybe a little to him. Keon Coleman, yeah, we haven't really seen Dalton Kincaid materialize as much as we would like. I think so. So Buffalo, I think with Josh Allen is, yes, I agree that, you don't have to have a superstar, and I've been on that train. I think they're better without Stephon Diggs. But I also think at some point you have to say, all right, we need a guy who we can trust that doesn't have to be a superstar, but is reliable in big down situations. And I don't know if they found that yet. And I think that was the case in the game against Baltimore because Josh had to exit the pocket, 90% of the time it felt like. And you can only make crazy throws on the sideline while falling down once a game.
Yeah.
What was that, by the
way? Go ahead, Jonathan. I'll pull up the stat that I had from Monday.
But I mean, for Buffalo, it also is like timing of play calling. You get your offense rolling for once in the game at one point, and then you go wildcat some sort of reverse pass.
What a horrible play call. Oh my
like
God.
it's timing. Like once your offense is finally starting to establish something, finally starting to move the ball, at this point it's a 2-possession game. You're down by 11 points and you have a chance to get back into the game, and you kind of throw away one of the better offensive possessions that you've had trying to do too much and trying to get too cute. Let your offense get rolling. I agree with your sentiment that they don't have a gotta have it guy. They don't have that guy where, okay, it's 3rd 10 and it doesn't matter whether it's single coverage, double coverage, there's a safety over him or not. We're throwing it to this guy and he's going to get us a first down. They don't have that, which means you have to keep yourself out of 3rd and long situations. you have to have positive plays on first and second down to get yourself to third and manageable,
Mhm.
where you open up your options for where you can go with the football. Because right now, if you get in the third and long, you don't really have your X factor of a guy, because that's not how the roster is constructed this year. And we kind of knew that coming in, that they wouldn't have one of those guys. So you have to be balanced as an offense. You have to avoid calling dumb trick plays in the middle of a good drive, and you have to you have to move the chains, and you have to stay in front of the chains, stay ahead of the chains instead
And
of
let me
falling.
say this too: I wouldn't be as concerned about the receiver thing if Dalton Kincaid was getting more involved. It is scary to me that he has only 132 yards through 4 games. He's only made 13 catches. Like this was, to me, the guy that I was banging the drum for at the beginning of the season. Like, okay, he's the guy who's going to make big plays. We have not seen that. And I think Dalton Kincaid, to me, we talked to him yesterday in practice in Buffalo. He's the guy who I think needs to be able to break out, and not in a superstar way, but in a get him the ball more. And not only get him the ball more, but put him on the field more. And I'm not saying Dawson Knox is a bad tight end, but the number of times that we've seen him on the field and not Kincaid, I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that. I think Joe Brady's a great offensive mind. I don't know if that's the direction that I would go. But we'll see. You know, again, every week is a new week in a big game against the Texans. Who's going to win it, Nick?
Yeah, well, let me back up, because I want to unpack that a little more. Because
sure,
Kincaid, I think absolutely Kincaid is a mismatch in the slot. You absolutely have to get him more involved. I told you I was going to pull up that stat. Josh Allen, this is per Next Gen Stats. Josh Allen was 0.9 yards away from the sideline when he threw that 52-yard completion to Shakir. Since entering the NFL in 2018, Allen has completed 6 of 7 passes for 118 yards and 3 touchdowns within a yard of the sideline. The rest of the NFL is 1 for 16.
Jeez. Can we just admit this for a second, by the way? And I don't want to get you off your point, Nick.
No, you're good.
If you take away the Super Bowls, which I think Mahomes is the number 1 quarterback in the NFL, Josh Allen's more talented than Patrick Mahomes. Can we just all agree with that now?
I would say
Jonathan's looking at me like I'm a
man. That's tough. Yeah, I don't know that I can get on board with that.
All right.
Either.
Okay. All right.
I think with his, he is going to make the plays with his legs, right? I think that's the up that he has on Mahomes. But Mahomes is going to play smart. Like, Mahomes doesn't need his legs. He can run when he needs to. So, no, I'm sorry. I can't get on board with that.
All right. I tried to throw it in there.
You're sounding just a tad like a homer with that one.
I'm not even a fan. I just cover the team. I just tell you what my eyes see.
Yeah, no, Pat is still different. Like, there are some throws that Pat Mahomes makes, and it's like, how did he even see where he was throwing the ball? Did he see where he was throwing the ball? Like, his anticipation passing the football is second to none in the league. Now, Josh Allen is a very talented quarterback, and I don't want that to get like lost in the plot here. Josh Allen is definitely one of the top quarterbacks in this league, but there's a reason why they haven't been able to get over that hump as far as beating Pat in Kansas City and getting to those Super Bowls. Yeah. There's a reason for that. And a lot of it is in team makeup and weapons that Pat has had and offensive makeup and everything like that. And they'll blame the overtime rules one year. It's a lot of stuff you can look at, but bottom line, Patrick Mahomes has the edge on Josh Allen and has had it for most of his career.
So, all right. So I'll turn the ship back around since I spun us in the direction. Looking forward, looking at this game, Bills versus Texans, over/under set at 47.5. I think this is going to be a shootout. Neither one of these defenses are great. They're good. They're middle of the pack. When I think about Josh Allen and the offense, you talked about Kincaid. I think this is going to be a breakout game for Keon Coleman. I know he's going up against Derek Stingley Jr., and Stingley's probably the only one that I'm afraid of on that Texans defense, but I just think that Coleman's heating up. He was a raw prospect coming out of Florida State. So I think that he's only going to catch on as the year moves on. I do like Buffalo to bounce back against this game. I just think if I'm looking at this as like quarterback battle, right? Josh Allen versus CJ Stroud, I'm taking Josh Allen, and I think this is a bounce back game for the Bills.
Man, hold on. Because I can't be the only person who's going to bring up probably the biggest storyline that there is coming into this game, which is Stephon Diggs' revenge game.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a prediction as far as how that is going to go. Either Stephon Diggs is going to have like 2 catches for 10 yards, and he's not going to do literally like anything at all, and he's going to leave the field pouting during their tears.
That's not what's going to happen. That's not what's going to happen.
Or he's going to explode.
He's going nuclear. Absolutely.
100+ yards, 2 touchdowns. He's going to go spin the ball in front of the Bills bench and point at Josh Allen while he does it. Like it's one or the other. Either he's going to have an explosive performance and propel Houston to a win just because he wants to get that win against his former team, or he's not going to do anything at all. And then in that case, I go Buffalo. So that's the key to the game for me is however Stephon Diggs plays, that's which way I'm leaning. If he has a bad game, I'm leaning Buffalo. If he has a good game, I'm leaning Houston.
And that's not just Diggs, right? I mean, that's going to be Stroud and D'Amico Ryans are going to say, hey, let's do this. Let's get this for Diggs. Allen, I don't necessarily believe that Allen. I do believe that Allen didn't do it on purpose, but it doesn't mean it's not fuel for the fire, right?
Yeah.
This is going to be a Diggs nuclear game.
I would love to see that spin the ball on the sideline. That would be great. Can we just get? And Buffalo and Houston fans don't want this. Can we just not play the game and get a Diggs Allen boxing match? That would be fun.
You mean kind of like Chad Ochocinco? You mean like the upcoming bout between Chad Ochocinco and James Harrison?
Yes, let's go.
Or get in the ring and hug
Vontaze Burfict versus any one of the Steelers' offensive linemen during that time. I'd be all for it. All right, I'm gonna give my pick here. I'm actually gonna go the other way of what Jonathan said. I think Houston's gonna win the game, but I don't think it's gonna be because of Stephon Diggs. Keep an eye on, if he is healthy, Tank Dell. He has done nothing in the first 4 weeks of the season. He's been largely irrelevant because of Nico Collins. But, Buffalo's secondary smart. Rasul Douglas, Christian Benford, they understand that they can't just look at Stephon Diggs. But I think, in the back of Buffalo's mind, there's going to be such a subconscious to make sure that 14 and now in this case 1, it doesn't do anything to again, expose them for what they are. I think you could see Nico Collins go off, but I don't know if there's anybody out there to cover Tank Dell if you go Collins and then Diggs as the 2 guys who are big in this game. So I think Tank Dell's going to have a big game. It also would not surprise me with Joe Mixon likely coming back if he goes off. I think you're going to be surprised with Houston and see they go run heavy early on and they try to attack the linebackers, which of course we know Terrell Bernard might play, but we don't know yet. And so I think they're going to use Joe Mixon maybe in the passing game. I think this is also a shootout. I think it's like a 30-27 game, but man, it is hard just in my book to go into Houston and to beat that team. If Buffalo can do it, it's a huge bounce back game. But, we talk about the schedule makers doing Pittsburgh no favors in the last 8 weeks of the season. How about putting Baltimore, Houston, and the Jets on the road in 3 consecutive games? That's a tough stretch for the Bills. And I think they're going to drop another one here. Would it shock me if they win? No. But I also think that we're looking at a situation here with Buffalo where if they can come out of that 3-game stretch at 4-2 as an overall record, you're probably thinking of it as a win. And I think they would rather have that win come against the Jets in division than the Texans. So I'll take Houston 30-27, but Stephon Diggs has a quiet day. Let's go to the Browns Commanders. We'll save Pittsburgh Dallas for last since it is the night game. Gents, we're going to play a game, scale of 1 to 10. The panic meter in Cleveland is
10. Absolutely. 0 to 10, we're at a 10.
I was going to be nice and say like an 8.5.
No. What do you have to look forward to? Nick Chubb coming back?
Yeah.
With one leg?
That's precisely what you have to look forward to. See the back half of the season with Nick Chubb at running back and see if you can't steal a couple games because you run the ball really well. And if that doesn't work, then fire everybody.
Jonathan's the eternal optimist in this room. That's why we have him, and we appreciate having him because he at least gives some positive insight. Nick, I guess I don't know where to start with Cleveland, right? The defense didn't look great against the Raiders offense. That was horrible. Now they go play a guy who, dare I say, it might be in the MVP category through the first 4 weeks, in Jaden Daniels. Deshaun Watson clearly is concern number 1, Nick. What would be your other concerns after that for the Browns? Because I think there's just more than number 4 that worries Cleveland fans.
I think it's their offensive line, and that's why I think they're dead in the water. That offensive line, you cannot overcome the injuries that they had because that offensive line was so good. You lose both your starting tackles and a starting guard. I said this last week. I don't care if you're Tom Brady. That's hard to overcome. So I just think that, that's why I say even if Chubb does come back, who's blocking for him? Because Chubb's going to need some room. He's not going to have that same burst that he had before. He's still going to be better than, I would say over half of the backs in the league. Don't hear what I'm not saying, but I just think that offensive line is going to be too much for even Stefanski to overcome for another coach of the year. I just think that that's going to be the biggest hole. And I think that pass rush of, I think the defense of the Commanders are sneaky good. I think Fowler's going to have a couple sacks. I like Payne on the inside as well. So I just think that it's that offensive line is going to be the Achilles heel of Cleveland the rest of the year.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and that was going to be kind of what I went with too, as far as biggest concerns outside of Deshaun is like the injuries that you have up front are killer and would make it hard for any quarterback to play behind that offensive line, let alone Deshaun Watson, who was clearly dealing with a lot of other stuff outside of just the game of football.
Yeah.
And playing behind that offensive line doesn't help any of your life's issues or struggles or problems. So that was definitely where I was looking to, as far as just they have to get healthy up front. They have to get better up front if they want to want to have a chance, and I just don't really see it happening.
Yeah, I agree. I think the offensive line to me is the biggest concern, but I'll also tell you what, guys, I've not been very excited about this team defense. I just Myles Garrett has not had a great start to the season. You look at this team and where they rank on defense. They're in the middle of the pack in yards per game allowed. They're averaging about 300. But the biggest concern for me is this strength of the Browns defense is supposed to be their front four, right? And the fact that they can get pressure on the quarterback and stop the run. They're leaking at 125 rush yards allowed per game. And I mean, if you do quick math and you look at that, that's bottom 12 of the NFL. And so if you can't stop the run, how are you expected to stop the passing game, even against a quarterback like Gardner Minshew, who we saw didn't do anything special but made the throws when he needed to make them? And so I just think at this point right now, you look at this team and you think, okay, if you can't beat the Giants or the Raiders at the easy front half of your schedule, it don't get any easier for Cleveland. They're not favored in this game against the Commanders, and they shouldn't be. Then you have to go to Philadelphia before you get Cincinnati, Baltimore, and the Chargers. Good luck. I mean, we could be looking at a team at 1-8 or 2-7 by the time they get to the bye. And I don't know. I'm really concerned about this team. I know I said this on Monday's show, Nick, with my headline. I think Deshaun Watson could eventually get Kevin Stefanski fired. I really do, with the way the offense looks right now. And the fact that, and I mentioned this on Monday's show, if you take away the first drive of games, this offense is not good. They get off the scripted play sheet and they have struggled to be able to find consistency. And so we'll see. I don't know if there's something that they just need to do to be able to rectify things, but it just does not look good right now for Cleveland. So let's go ahead and pick go ahead, Nick. Yeah,
I will say this. It does look like Jedrick Wills came back this week. I was trying to find the practice report from today. It looks like Conklin and he was limited today, and then Jedrick Wills was also limited today. If you get those two guys back, I think you do have a shot again. So let me transition right into my pick'em. I do have the Commanders winning this game, and I think it comes down to Jaden Daniels. I think you're going to end up with Denzel Ward against Terry McLaurin, and that's going to shut down the receiving game. They don't really have anybody in the receiving game that worries me. But if Garrett's out of this game, Jaden Daniels and is just going to run the ball everywhere. Get it across the middle to Zach Ertz. Jaden Daniels may be the leading rusher at the end of this game. So I do, just based on that offensive line and just Jaden Daniels and that offense, I do go Washington here.
How about you, Jonathan?
Unfortunately, as the resident Giants fan who
you guys have a win against Cleveland. What's the problem?
we have a win against Cleveland, and we should have a win against Commanders. But anyway, I have to go with Washington. It hurts. I don't like saying it out loud, so you're not going to hear me say it very many more times on this show. But yeah, I'm going with Washington, and Jaden Daniels is just too much for the Browns defense right now. I don't think they're playing well enough to contain him, and he's been playing kind of out of his head.
Yeah,
I will say Brian Robinson, running back for the Commanders, did not practice again today. I think that would be a big hit to that Commanders offense, and which could be, plus side Cleveland.
I don't know if I can disagree with you guys, and I hate to have three people say the same thing, but I agree. There's nothing good positive going for Cleveland right now, and you have to travel on the road. The Commanders team's going to be ready to go. Nick, you made a good point. I think Brian Robinson, if he doesn't play, that could be a concern, but Jaden Daniels' athletic ability is enough for me to be able to make up for that. Yeah. I think this is going to be a really ugly game. I think it could be 38-20, 38-17. And I don't know if at this point Cleveland's got a lot going for them, as you talked about. So we'll see. But I would be extremely concerned.
I'm going to record the game and watch it at 2 times speed. That's how bad I don't want to watch this game.
Well, if you have the NFL Sunday ticket, you can.
Exactly.
My family bought it last week because my wife's a Patriots fan, and she was like, "Well, I want to watch them play the Niners." I said, "I would rather watch paint dry." I feel like it's less torturous watching that than that game. So at least if you're a fan of one of the local teams, you could be New England. Just keep that in mind. Let's finish up with the Steelers and Cowboys, guys. Is it any question in your mind that Justin Fields should be the starter moving forward?
No.
No question to me.
No, not at all. Paul's not here, so we can just say no.
Listen,
no. Go ahead. No, so I think what pushed him over the edge for me was when you finally saw him in a come-from-behind game. I mean, they didn't win the game, but he threw for over 300 yards and and then he threw for a touchdown and ran for 2. Mm-hmm. That shows me that he does have control of this offense. He can perform and not go into, at least, small sample size, not go into the Justin Fields of Chicago, who's just forcing turnovers. So, no, I think after, even though they lost that game, I think he does stay the starter for the rest of the year.
Yeah, no, they lost that game, but they didn't lose that game because Justin Fields played poorly, and that I called them losing this game. I called it being that.
We all did.
Letdown game at this point in the season, but Justin Fields still looked good passing, like you said, 300 plus yards, 3 accounted for touchdowns. Like, he hasn't done anything to lose the job. At this point, Russ is dressing out. I'm not confident that Russ is actually really that injured, and I guess it's hard to make that claim. I feel like if they needed Russ to play, Russ could play, but there's no need for him right now. Like, Justin Fields is doing his thing, and he's looking more and more comfortable as you progress in the season. It's looking like it's his job for the long haul.
Yeah, for the Steelers, I think from an overall perspective, the thing that worries me is that they have not played a complete game with both sides of the football yet. The defense was very concerning to me against an old rival in Joe Flacco, and the fact that they couldn't contain the pass, and even more so the fact that they couldn't get off the field on 3rd down. That is the most worrisome part to me. I think if I'm looking at some areas of concern for Pittsburgh, the quarterback's not one of them. What is a concern for me is the running game. It has not existed. It has not existed. Najee Harris has not gotten going, and this is a trend for him. I mean, he always seems to turn it on late in the season, but right now it's showing nothing. Of course, Jaylen Warren's been hurt. I think at some point you got to quit asking Justin Fields to be Superman, and you have to make the run game work. Cordell Patterson looked really good until he got hurt in that game, but I don't think Pittsburgh's going to be able to contend for either the division or a good playoff spot unless the run game starts getting going, because that's Arthur Smith's bread and butter at the end of the day. So I think that's a concern. Then defensively, again, getting off the field on 3rd down. I have been impressed with Patrick Queen in the run defense. I have not been impressed with him in coverage. He cannot cover a JV receiver. And so thank goodness for Deshaun Elliott, who might be on the all-pro team through the first 4 weeks of the season. But, I think, too, for Pittsburgh, you got to find a way to be consistent. And to me, this Sunday night's a great chance to do that.
Yeah, I agree.
They've also got to battle the injury bug themselves, down a couple of defensive linemen, and their offensive line obviously is another place of concern as far as the injuries that they've been dealing with up front. So they're also struggling a little bit as far as depth goes in the trenches. A couple big injuries, a couple like season-ending
Mhm.
injuries, especially on the offensive line. It's something to watch out for and something to kind of keep an eye on as far as depth issues go over the course of the season if they can't get healthy.
Yeah.
Nick, did you have something to add?
No, I think that it's weird to me. I would have never thought this. I was just looking up the betting odds. Pittsburgh is favored -2.5, and I would not have had them as the favorite. But I guess when you account for Micah Parsons being doubtful, he's probably not playing this game. Dallas's run game looks awful, which is plus Pittsburgh. And if Joey Porter Jr. shuts down CeeDee Lamb, you have Brandon Cooks is out of this game with an infection after a procedure he had done, which was kind of a crazy story. I think you start to pile all those things up. I think that's plus size Pittsburgh. I do think the defense bounces back in this one. We called it last week. It was just a trap game, for Pittsburgh last week. And I think they're going to come back. Usually they respond well in this situation. They would love to come back and win this game against Dallas. I think it's going to be even bigger of a story for Dallas to lose this game. I think there are red flags in Jerry Kingdom if they lose this game, and I think there's a real possibility. I worry about the Steelers' offense. I think this is going to be a low-scoring game. Over/under set at 44. It's just going to be Pittsburgh controlling the clock, playing the type of game they want to play. Run, play some defense, and I think that Pittsburgh wins this one.
Now, Jonathan, I know that you want to pick Pittsburgh for personal sake, but what say you in this game?
It's not because I hate the Cowboys, but I'm really going with Pittsburgh. Justin Fields has been playing well, and I have been a believer in Justin Fields from game one this season. I've liked what I've seen from him, and I want to kind of see how long it'll last. I want to see how far can he take his string of positive performances.
I'm going to take Pittsburgh too. I'm going to round out this with a trio of Pittsburgh victories here. I think in this rivalry, in what's I think been a historic rivalry because they're Super Bowl matchups and they always play each other close. It's been close down the wire. You take a look just to the last five matchups in particular: 24-20, 20-13, 27-24, 35-30, 24-19. They've all been close. I think this one's going to be close too.
Yeah,
2.5 to me feels about right. I think if I was a betting man, I'd probably take Pittsburgh because they're giving me the half point for 3 there. And I would take Pittsburgh to win by 3. I actually think that this is going to be one of the more high-scoring games of the weekend. I think this is a chance for Justin Fields to really get right, the run game to really make strides, as you mentioned, with Micah Parsons out, Nick, and the depletion on that defense. I think what you're going to see from Arthur Smith is a bit of opening of the Cheesecake Factory menu, as he put today. And I think you're going to see the back page with the cheesecakes as opposed to just the appetizers that are still $18 or $19. Cheesecake Factory, lower your prices. Gosh darn it, that's a sidebar. But
save that for the food critic podcast coming
exactly
soon.
Which we have to coming soon. We'll announce that at a later date. But I do think Pittsburgh will win this game. I think you're looking at like a 28-25, 28-26 type of a game. And I think we're going to see Justin Fields continue to do what Justin Fields does. And then I think we're going to start hearing the rumors coming out of Pittsburgh of, okay, is Russell Wilson on the trade block? And I really think that would be something that if you're a Cleveland, maybe you look at. If you're a Miami, maybe you look at. And I think the rumor starts swirling around after week 5. Guys, before we go, Nick, I want to get your thoughts on this. Jonathan, if you want to jump into your thoughts on who's going to win the Guardians-Tigers series, because I think it does have a bit of a local flair. Nick, who do you think wins that series?
And this is not because I hate Cleveland or I'm a Pittsburgh fan. I like the Tigers. I like it. I like an underdog team. Everybody loves the good story. I give the edge. They had a great end of season. It was like what they won. Yeah, won last 15 of their last 20.
They were 22-8, I believe, going into the end of August and early September. They had the best record in baseball.
At one point, they had a 1% chance of making the playoffs, but won 15 of their last 20. I like their offense. I think that advantage Scrooble. I think Scrooble is likely. I mean, you win the pitching triple crown. I don't know how you're not the Cy Young winner. I think that's going to be a difference maker for them, and I like the Tigers in this one.
Jonathan, do you have a pick? I know that your team just got eliminated yesterday, but
Yeah, I'm not going to lie to you guys and pretend like this is a very super informed pick. I haven't been tapped into either the Guardians or the Tigers all season long. I kind of focus in on my Braves, and that's about it. But I'll go Guardians for the sake of picking something opposite of Nick. I'll rock with the Guardians.
Well, listen, so far this year, you pick opposite of me. You're doing pretty good.
We love parody on this show, do we not?
I did.
And see how this works. I put these two in the top two boxes because I have to be the tie-breaking vote. See what they do to me? Jeez, we create this podcast network. We look for camaraderie, and then they're like, yeah, Isaac, you got to split the difference here. You know what? My heart tells me Detroit. 18 of 26 former Erie Seawolf players are on the Tigers roster.
Yeah.
I love what Tarek Skubel's doing, man. This dude – when you can find a left-handed ace pitcher, you're doing really well as a baseball team. Jonathan Max Fried, I think that's an example for you with Atlanta, despite his injury concerns this season. I think ultimately it's going to come down to, in this series, it's going to come down to the bottom of the lineup. I think you saw Detroit down the stretch in that game against Houston yesterday. The bottom half of the order really produced. I think the bullpen is going to be a big thing too. The reason that I'm going to pick the Guardians in this series is because I think they have a bullpen that can rival Detroit's. I mean, we know the Tigers, they just throw bullpen guys after Skubal no matter what. But I think when you look at what Cleveland has for the 7th, 8th, and particularly 9th inning, I mean, if Detroit's down to the 9th, you've got no shot. And I do think Emmanuel Clase will pitch 6 outs for potential save situations in this series.
Absolutely.
5-game series, it would not shock me if Tarek Skubal pitches game 1, game 4, and is out of the bullpen in game 5. It really wouldn't. Yeah. But I will take the Guardians.
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah, why not? I think it's going to go 5. I do. I think it's going to go to the distance. And I just hope for parity's sake and for the fans' sake here, it's an awesome series. I hope it's down to the wire in every single game. You know Detroit's going to be sold out. I know Cleveland's going to probably be sold out too. It's going to be a heck of an environment. And we're going to see an AL Central team in the ALCS. How about this? We're going to have an AL Central team in the ALCS. We might have 2. We might have 1, most likely one of the World Series, and yet that division still finished as a whole under 500.
It's crazy.
Like, is there a franchise worse than the
right
White Sox right now?
Well, Pirates, but no.
I will say White Sox Twitter, whoever's running their Twitter page has definitely captured the hearts of the entire baseball community, because you can't get them to tweet out a post-game score after they lose for anything. They will literally rather tweet any graphic or sentence of anything else other than tweeting out the final score after they've lost a couple in a row. So if you can't get anything else from the White Sox being bad, their social media has been killing it.
Yeah, to any White Sox fans out there who are watching this podcast, and I don't know why you would be, because you're probably in the south side of Chicago just finding some positivity, we're here for you. We at the Gem City Sports Podcast Network have no bias, and we love you, and we will embrace you with open arms. Enjoy the playoffs with us, because that's what sports is meant to be enjoyed, whether you're a fan of a team or whether you're not a fan of a team. And this is a great time of year. Baseball playoffs, NFL season in full swing, high school football in week number 7, and college football happening too, and we'll get to that a little bit next week. We're back tomorrow night. Want to mention, of course, our next show, 10 o'clock, not in the CW anymore. I'll get to that a little bit later on when things calm down a bit, but we are on YouTube, X, Facebook, Twitch. Going to have it on a couple of other streaming platforms as well. So join us. We're going to react to high school football week 7. The 3 of us will be here. Hope to have Paul Adamczak on the show as well with his great insight. And we're going to see if Prep-McDowell and Fairview Fort LaBeouf live up to the hype, gents. I can't wait for tomorrow. It's most excited I've been for a week of high school football in a while.
And don't forget, we're going to talk about we didn't even talk about this tonight. Devontae Adams becoming a Pittsburgh Steeler. So
get out of town.
Pin that for Friday as well.
Get out of town. Mark Davis saw Franco Harris make that reception and swore he would never make a trade with Pittsburgh ever again.
That's fair. I'll give you that one.
All right. Well, we'll see if it happens. Nick is Nostradamus, and he gets the gold star for the night for the prediction. All right, we are done here. Great stuff tonight. Make sure to give us a follow. We'll be posting some clips of this show on social media as well. For Jonathan Williams, Nick Hartman, I'm Isaac Petcash. See you tomorrow in T-minus 25 hours. Week 7 is going to be a fun one.